his ways, but turned aside after lucre, money, and took bribes and perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old. Oh, you're going to die and you're going to leave us behind. And your sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. They were envious of the other nations that they had kings. He said, if we had a king, we wouldn't have to worry about these judges. But the thing displeased Samuel. This is the part of the meat of it. The thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. But they have rejected, it says, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. So the way they're treating me, that's the way they're treating you now. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. Now I could stop here and get deep in this lesson, but I feel that it won't really make the point unless I continue on for a little bit. So in 11, this is where they should have taken heed, because Samuel, he's well-known prophet. He told them, he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground and to reap his harvest, and make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to work, to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and you shall be his servants. And you shall cry out in that day because of your king, which he shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. There is the meat of the lesson today, the covenant that God has made with us. But we want a king. Do you know what the king's going to bring you? Misery. So what have I done? I fought your battles up to now. I've destroyed your enemies before you. When I brought you in here, look at what all I've done. You didn't have to fight all them. I fought them for you. I gave you strong men. And he didn't overtax the people at all. But now he's going to have a king, and they're going to lose everything. Well, what did they decide? They got their warning. Nevertheless, I hate that word. The people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nah, but we will have a king over us, that we may also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Well, he's going to fight your battles with your sons and daughters. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man into a city. So continue reading in chapter 9 and 10 is when he took and selected Saul. He was a Benjamite. He's from the smallest of the tribes of Israel. And his family was of the smallest families of the tribe of Benjamin. And Saul says, well, why me? But Saul was a pretty good man to look after. You know, he's pretty big, looked like he could be a king, strong physical appearance, and everybody liked him. Problem was, he wasn't that mature. He didn't make good decisions. But the people liked him. So Saul anointed him king, according to the word of the Lord. He said, this is the way it starts. And this is where we start. So God's plan for his people are better than their own plans. When they had the period where they were doing right, or whatever was right in their own sight, God already had a plan for them. But they were rejecting that plan and doing their own thing. Now they're going to have to do the king's thing. They're going to even give up whatever's right in your own sight. Sorry, you have to go to the judge. You have to go to the king, go to his appointed people. But the thing is at the first is, I will trust God's plan for me, even when it is at odds with the prevailing worldview. They looked at the world and said, the world is ruled by kings. We're the only nation. We're the oddity. We're the oddballs. Why are we like this? They become envious of other nations for what they had, a king that they didn't have. And he said, well, if we had a king, we'd be like them. That's the whole point. You don't want to be like them. You want to be the peculiar people. You want to be the outsider and the outlier. You want to be the oddball. And when God fought for you, you want to be the ones that, how did they win that battle? No way they should have won that battle. But they win the battle and you know, all the spoils of the war that they get. And the Philistines were amazed because they could never win. Why can't we win? We're a much superior army than they've got. Why do swords not prevail over pitchforks? Because God was fighting for them. But now they have to do it on their own. So here's where we go. The call for a king. We want a king. So besides asking for a king, how else could Israel have asked for help? What do we think? Have you ever done anything, asked God for something, or, you know, decided to do something that later on decided that wasn't a great thing to do? I'm glad God kept me out of that. Or you asked God for something, he didn't give it to you, and down the road you say, thank you, God, you didn't give me that. Right? Because we don't always know what's best for us. But if we would trust God to know what's best for us, see, there was one time I really did think about getting married to this one girl. Was not Sheila. It was years before I met her. A lot of years. And I was really young. Way too young and full of energy to be married and tied down at the time. I am so glad that never happened. I'm just going to tell you. God had a plan for me. Even if she didn't like the plan, you know. How it ended up. I'm joking. She really loves me. But he had a plan for me. And I would not be here. You would not know me. And you'd never have met me had I followed my plans. Because I ain't no telling if I would have lasted or if I would have just been somewhere else. But I wouldn't be here. I just don't think I would have been here. But God is merciful. Says that sometime you repent and you say, you know what? I got to go this way anyway. You never know what God's plans can do to adjust. He adjusted his covenant with them time and time again after his people repented. You know, because they always go their own way, and God would get mad. He even put them in, you know, bondage for a number of years, but he would always call them out. If they would just call to him, they would always just, you know, come to themselves and repent, say, God, save us from this, deliver us from this. And he would always do it, and guys are on back. So God doesn't force us to follow him just because. He'll give you what you want, but I hope you know the consequences of what he does. So, right now, in the world we live in right now, how many of you are, I'm not going to be a Trumpite or anything like that, but President Trump is doing all kinds of weird things. But at the time we're living in right now, and as fractured as this nation is, you know, from one way or the other, how many times do we clamor for new leadership when things are not going your way? Well, it's not benefiting me. You're not thinking about how your neighbors may be prospering, but and how you might change your ways and prosper with them. But you always think about new leadership. Always create some kind of an impetus for change. You want to, I don't like this way. I don't know. But there's a lot of situations you face that are just temporary. Samuel had stood in the gap for the Israelites. They'd forgotten all the good deeds he had done. They failed to remember their time of great fear when the Lord responded to Samuel's sacrifice by thunderings against the Philistines. Yeah. So that ever-growing Philistine threat made the people feel the king was necessary. But they had not calculated the cost of what that would mean. If you give up God, what do? You get a king. But the king gets to take all your sons and all your daughters and all your things, right? So he offered them that vision. But how could you, having given so many warnings to the people, refused and ignored those warnings and decided, I want a king anyway? This is Samuel telling them what's fixing to happen. Samuel, who was a trusted prophet, they didn't trust his sons because they were corrupt, but they trusted Samuel. They knew Samuel, when he spoke from God, that God was going to do it. How could a whole people say, well, Samuel, you're old. Your ways, you probably just don't hear right from God no more. You just got old. Your ears ain't right. Old people, they get disrespected. They didn't make it to that old age, disobeying God and doing what you're doing now. They did it through their service, and God is still speaking through them, but the younger it is, the more you seem to know. All these young people today, can you see it happening today? What's happening back then? The younger you are, the more you know. And the younger you are, the more you know better than the older people. There was a man on one of his little preaching reels who was talking about, look, I'm going to tell you, he wasn't even a preacher, he was just a coach. He said, look, how old am I? Am I older than you? And he said, yeah, then I know more than you. Plain fact, I know more than you. You can maybe beat me in a game or something, or a computer, or a gee whiz this or gee whiz that, but as far as life is concerned, I know a whole lot more about living life than you do. Because I'm older. I've lived a lot more of it than you have. I said, what about your younger people, younger than you? Do you know more than them? That's just the way it is. That's just the way nature is. But you ask most people, you try to give them some advice, like you try to tell your younger brother, hey, don't go that way. That way he's going to be in jail, or he's going to be dead. Get him off the streets. Get him out of them gangs. Get him out of this. Get him out of that. And he was trying to tell him, teach him something. Old people know a thing or two. Listen. Nah, you don't know what you're talking about, old man. That you don't know what kind of life I've lived. I don't need to know what kind of life you live. I'm trying to tell you the life I lived and how I escaped that and how I avoided that. And you won't listen. And then he talked about how his brother calls him from prison every week, wishing, regretting they listened to him. It's too late now. It's way too late. So it's not about age or about this or about that, but how do they avoid or ignore all these warnings from people that, had the respect of the nation for so long? How do they just disrespect them all of a sudden and say, I know more than you know. You don't know my pain and suffering. You don't know what I'm doing, what I'm going through. It boggles my mind. But that's because I guess I'm old and I've learned. Maybe I've gained a little wisdom. But it boggles my mind the way young people treat that. So they wanted a king because they wanted to be like other nations, but rather trust in the covenant God had made with them. And he kept it by protecting them, fighting for them over and over again. The Israelites decided they'd press for a king that they could see with their eyes. This visible leader would fight for them and subdue their enemies, and they would soon watch their king face severe internal battles that would shake the nation of Israel to its core. So, how should they have handled this? If they were so insecure, what should they have asked God for besides a king? What would you do in the absence of judges and the absence of everything else? What would you ask for? I don't know. I didn't live in that time, so I don't know. But they'd rejected God long before Isaiah's prophecy that Jesus would be despised and rejected of men. The Lord felt the sting of the Israelites' rejection. Isaiah 53:3 says, he is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Okay? And that was a long time before Jesus came, but, we did the same thing. Well, there's Jesus. Well, give us Barabbas. We don't want that man. They didn't esteem him at all. It seems like on on one Friday they were working him in, the next Friday, they were hanging him. The same guy. And they knew all that he had done. They knew all he had done because they were laying palm leaves in front of him and putting their clothes out there when he was coming in the city all triumphantly. And by that time, the next week went by. It's like, what went through their mind? What got in there? It boggles your mind. Parents deal with similar scenarios when their children ask for something they should not have. Sometimes a parent will give them what they want to teach them a lesson. You don't really want this, but whatever it is. I saw a video, a boy crawling over to the electrical socket. He was going to stick something in there, and the mama was running over there to try to stop him, and the dad goes, "Oh, no, wait, let's watch." That's an extreme thing. You wouldn't want to do that. But you see, you hear it and see a little, flashes of light in the background. You say, yep, you learned it. Sometimes, stupidity ought to hurt. If you're stupid, it should hurt. Because that pain brings you some realization. Right? Right now, what do parents do now that they didn't do 50 years ago? When you ride your bicycle and you built your ramp off a shaky cinder block and a piece of plywood you knew that couldn't hold hardly any weight, but you built it anyway and you jumped it anyway, you weren't wearing a helmet, elbow guards, or knee guards, or anything else. You were jumping it on a bike that barely would roll because you jumped it before and broke it so many times. But you probably also broke yourself, skinned some knees and all that, but you learned something along the way. Stupid should hurt. You learn not to do certain things, right? And we want to protect our children so much and not let them, climb a tree. Well, how are they going to learn to climb if you don't let them climb? They won't. They got to fall every once in a while. And I like this, but it's an example. My wife bought my youngest grandson this little bumper backpack. You put it on his shoulder, it's got a little thing on the back of the head, just in case they fall backwards and won't hit their head. Well, how's he going to learn not to fall backwards if it don't hurt? But you don't want them to get hurt. Mamas don't want their babies hurt. But where's the line that we draw? Either you got to believe that God will protect your children, or they won't. He'll fight your battles, or he won't. He'll prepare for you, supply your needs. All the things he says in his covenant, he said he's going to do. He's either going to do it or won't. How do we get to the point where we believe that he won't? And we got to get him a backpack just in case we fall. I mean, that's a weird example. Is that right? But isn't that the way we do? We helicopter our kids and then we lawnmower our kids because now, we got to clear the path for them, cut the grass down so they can see the snakes. I watched them going through swamps and stuff, chasing crawfish and tadpoles. And he says, here, you wanted a son, you got a daughter. The daughter's out there in the mud puddles. She's the one chasing the tadpole. She's the one that's picking up the spiders and the snakes and stuff. And you're going, oh, my God, how did that happen? How do you think their immune systems come to be so strong? Because they get out there amongst it. Anyway, Samuel wrestled with this internally. He was deeply hurt, and he was rejected by the people's request, but he did what the Lord told him to do. Israel traded the awesome power of God for the awesome chaos of politics. God will not force his plan on us, so if he gives you an offer or a covenant or something, you can choose to sign into it or not. He's not going to force himself on you. But once you do, he's going to make sure that you're not deceived or whatever. Any decision you have to make, you're going to understand your consequence. He warned the people. So Samuel was anointed, or had anointed Saul as king. After Israel made their request, God reluctantly answered yes and created a scenario to crown Saul as the first king of Israel. Saul's father sent him with a servant to find some lost donkeys. This is the beginning. They felt like they'd searched everywhere but could not find them, and Saul's servant suggested that the two seek assistance of the seer named Samuel. Maybe Samuel can tell you where they are. This was the way that they introduced Saul to Samuel, so that Samuel could anoint him as king. So the man of God would be able to help. So providentially, the Lord set the meeting between Saul and the king-to-be and Samuel the prophet to give Israel its first king in a private conversation. This is not in front of everybody, just mano a mano. Samuel told Saul he would be king. Samuel prophesied of various signs that would come to pass as the Spirit empowered. And you can read some of these in 9 and 10. And they're pretty neat the way the things came to pass, kind of as signs to prove that this would come to pass as well. And he didn't need to worry anymore about finding his father's livestock because they'd returned home. They'd already be there. When you get there, they'll be here. So the opinion polls might have supported Saul's inauguration because the young man seemed to possess all the attributes that people would want in a king. He was head and shoulders taller than the rest of the people. He looked like a formidable warrior. His towering presence hid his inner insecurities, however, because at this stage in his life he possessed great humility, both by outward appearance and inner fortitude. He seemed like an excellent choice, but red flags began to fly early in the story of Saul. He did not make good decisions. He failed to demonstrate good leadership skills. The servant was spiritual enough to present the idea of appealing to Samuel for when he and Saul could not find the donkeys. But Saul did not even have the money to give a gift to the prophet. The servant did. Even when Saul behaved with humility, he may not have possessed the necessary qualities to prioritize God first and effectively manage his resources. He dwelt on the opinions of the people way too much. He cared too much about what people thought about him, how he acted, what he did. But he was anointed. The Lord had a plan to transform Saul, and the prophet would anoint Saul to be king, and God's Spirit would empower him to lead the people. You know, if you hear about Samson, how the Spirit of the Lord would come upon Samson whenever the Philistines came, and he would just rise up and beat them to death, you know, and drive them back. Well, that's the way that he did it back in the day. The Spirit of the Lord would come upon them, and they would go to war, and they would do these things, do great exploits. He said in the book of Judges, most of the leaders God had chosen had the distinction of the Spirit being on them. Samson, because it would rush upon him. And the two anointed kings of Israel, Saul and David, they knew what it felt like for the Spirit to come upon them like the mighty rushing wind on the day of Pentecost. They had that experience that the Lord would come in like a rush. They would, they'd put the hand, they'd get some guidance, some wisdom from God, and they'd go on about their business. Shall I go and conquer this people? Will you deliver them into my hand? They always inquired of God. So hiding, though, red flags tend to hide. It says Saul would need the rush of the Spirit to empower him for the immense task ahead of him. And when God chose the Benjamite to be king, no one could find him because he was hiding among the stuff. He didn't feel himself worthy. During perhaps the most important meeting of his life, Saul remained with the baggage. And many pointed to Saul's humility in this action, but it wasn't really true humility. His location creates a strong contrast with the next king, David. The shepherd boy left all his baggage behind him before he fought Goliath. David charged a keeper with watching his sheep when he sojourned to the battlefield to take food to his brothers. He'd just leave the sheep by himself. He left them in the hands of someone. David also refused the armor of Saul. Wasn't proven. Unlike Saul, David would not allow anything unnecessary to weigh him down. He made good decisions. And we just watched the cartoon, the story of David, or the movie David, the movie, or whatever it was. It was really neat. And Saul comes into the cave, and everybody's like, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. He had a sword. And instead, he just cut off a piece of the garment. I'm not going to touch the anointing of God. And he told Saul, I'm not here to displace you. He said, I could have done that in the cave. And Saul had to say, you know what? He could have killed me. If he got that close to me and I didn't know he was there, something's wrong. But give him a little time. He was back on the trail after him again. That evil spirit would just get on him. And David wasn't there to drive it away anymore. So, at first, Samuel anointed Saul in private, not even allowing Saul's servant to see him pour the oil on the new king. But next, God revealed his plan to the entire kingdom when Samuel publicly revealed God's choice for king. Saul also proved himself by winning a great battle over the Ammonites. Things seemed to be going well for Saul. Even when others told Saul to deal harshly with his detractors, the king showed mercy. Sadly, the anointed king was spiraled out of control as he replaced the Spirit as his guide and chose to follow the selfishness of his own pride, his own heart. So, you want to do what's right in your own sight? Or continue to follow the words of the Lord. Continue walking in covenant with God day by day, knowing that there's safety, security, and all this, and you have no worries, no complaints. Hakuna Matata. There you go. I know y'all have seen that movie, No Worries. But when you walk with God, that's exactly what it is, no worries. Why would you worry about anything? Don't take thought about what you're going to eat or drink tomorrow or wear or all this. I've got that taken care of. You worry about the evil of today. Don't fear for what can destroy just the body. That can kill the body, but fear that which can kill the body and the soul in hell. He gave us warnings, red flags. He gave us advice. He gave us wisdoms. He gave us all kinds of things for us to keep this covenant that he purchased with such a great price. Started it with the blood of animals, but ended it with his own. So we have a covenant that's, if for some reason you're having some issues with understanding your walk and your covenant, and you think that God doesn't have your best interest at heart, what are you going to do now? What are your choices going to be? Are you just going to go your own way? Are you going to ask? Are you going to seek the help of those who are still walking that covenant? Or just ask your friends, your neighbors down the street, say, hey, man, this ain't going right with me. What are y'all doing? Why is it going well for y'all? Well, it might be going well for them because it's the only life they'll ever have. Because they have no promised life after. Anyway, the once and mighty promising king, he entered a time of decline when he didn't kill Agag and all the others. I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit, but when he started to disobey God in small things, it eventually would ramp up in some of the big things. And then when he finally, just the last straw that God will allow, that's it. I'm removing the kingship off of him. He's no longer king. So I'll anoint another king. But he went into decline, but his pride, his impatience, impulsiveness, disobedience, his paranoia, it caused the whole kingdom to unravel. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about all of Israel. Because all of Israel wanted him. Now, all of Israel was going to be blessed by him or cursed by him. So you got to be careful who you choose. Who you choose to follow and who you choose to have that kind of deal in your life. So his behavior worsened throughout his reign. He battled a spirit that troubled him, and he sought a musician, David, to play music to soothe his soul. And God did calm Saul over a period of time, up until the time that Saul threw a spear. And then that was the last time that I see where David would be able to play to drive that spirit off. Threw a spear, meaning to kill him. Be careful the spirits you entertain. So what were some of the signals that Saul was growing distant from God? I mean, we know Agag sitting there alive. That was a big sign. The cattle, the sheep, all the spoils of the war that should have been destroyed and should have been never have heard of. We know of that. Those are some signs. But what signs